Hello, and welcome back to the Manifesting Book Magic podcast with me, your host, Nicole Perriella-Rehmke. And today I am thrilled because we have the most exciting interview. Today we are welcoming Kimmery Moss. She is one of the most passionate, enthusiastic, and loving people I have ever met. She is a gifted poet, yoga teacher, wife, and mother. And her recent book, Wolf Mother, is an absolute masterpiece. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Kimmery.
Oh my gosh, I just wanted to giggle with joy the whole time you were just talking. Um, Thank you for having me. This is such an honor. I'm so excited to be here. Let's mix up some juices and get talking about all the yummy things.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So let's just kick it off with the art, the beauty, the magic. I would love it if you could read a poem from your book to us and just kind of like soak us in the magic.
Excellent. Let's do it. So I'm going to read you Dropping Keys on page 70, and it's after Hafiz. And this is a poem I wrote after having both my babies, so you get a little context of what time period we're talking here. I am in my reclamation era. It's mine, 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 and I'll have it all back now. Thank you. It started with my breasts one day. Suddenly, I took my 21-month-old to CVS and asked the pharmacist for Sudafed. She gave me 60 tiny red pills. I bought organic green cabbage. I put it in my bra. I will not make milk any longer. The weeks that pass are sweet and slow, and I enjoy every last drip and flow. It is time to reclaim what is mine. This belly, these scars, my own blood in my own veins. Take an Advil if you want. God damn it, smoke a joint or sip an herbal tea. Wake for the sun and not for a cry. And the first time in 5 years, oh, we women, we are gods. We loan out these pieces of ourselves with such joy. We create our worlds and sustain them. We make our decisions and we live them. We make our children and we must release them. We must release ourselves. I am in my this is my own life again era. I'd like to see how this feels in my new body era. I'd like to move slowly in front of a mirror era. It all came at the perfect time era. It is beautiful on both sides of the fence era. Every inch of the skin is sacred era. Float in my own juices of life era. The juices are all for me era. Sip myself and moan era. Drop keys for all the rowdy prisoners era. Be a bird or a wolf or the wind era. Be whatever I damn well please era. It has been ours all along era, and I'll have it all now back. Thank you. I'm in my reclamation era.
Oh, one thing I love about your poetry, it's just so vibrant, so alive, so rich. Ugh, it just feels so good. And I think this is one of the reasons why we're friends because we both feel it so deeply. And when you read your poetry, it's just amazing. So give us like the story about your poetry and Wolf Mother specifically. Like, how did this book come to be, and what was that process like for you?
Okay, so I started writing poetry post college, post teaching middle school, not feeling great, kind of being like, I followed all the rules and I don't really feel like I won, right? I was told A plus B equals C. I did A, I did B, I did extra credit, A, B, 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 A, B, B, so many A's and B's, and I still didn't get to C, right? So I just decided that I was going to meditate every day for a year, right? And for some reason, when I did that, like boom, poetry started flowing out. That was book one. Then kind of like did my teacher training, yoga teacher training, kind of came into like who I am, realized totally renegotiating my contract with God, who I even thought God was, who I even thought I was, who I thought everyone else was. Why are we even here? What even is life? I used to think it was like a test. Are you going to pass or fail? Are you going to get into heaven or hell? And now it doesn't feel like that at all for me. Right. So that was that period of sort of just like, whoa, threw everything out, rewrote everything. Then I had my babies, which was a combination of the most incredible and potent and painful and intense experience that I have ever had. My daughter and I were in labor for 3 days, and then I ended up with a C-section, and I was like not well after, right? I felt really weak. I had 2 blood transfusions. I was in the hospital for a week. I mean, it was so intense for me, and not for her. I mean, she was perfect. She was like this most divine, perfect thing, and I'm over here feeling like I failed. I'm weak and I don't feel strong at all. Right. And then boom, a couple months later, it's COVID. We're all on our own. Like I have no one to help me, to talk to, right? And so in a way that was really wonderful in hindsight, again, hindsight, not in the moment, because it kind of gave me this like, are you going to step up or not? Are you going to get happy or not? Are you going to figure this out or not? And it's you that has to do it. And that was so wonderful because that kind of led into the beginning of Wolf Mother, which is like, look, if I'm going to be a mom, which I clearly am, I mean, already made that decision. It's already, I mean, she's already in my arms. Then I'm going to make this the most awesome, badass experience where I feel good and she feels good. And we're like, living life like juicy, right? You know, and I was so far from that. so so it became like this process of like, okay, I'm gonna get to this place where I feel strong. And a lot of that was getting stronger, right? When you have a baby, you are physically very depleted. So a lot of that was like feeding myself well and going on runs, going on walks, getting in nature, all the things. But a lot of that was the way that I was talking to myself. A lot of that was the excuses I was making for not feeding myself spiritually and creatively and all of those things. So then my second baby comes around. He's amazing, another difficult birth, but we make it through. And at the end, I got postpartum depression. I felt really not good. And I decided, because I do things very unconventionally always, that how I was going to get better is I was going to wake up, and the first thing I was going to do every morning, I only had to wake up 5 minutes before my baby, right? Because any amount of sleep is sacred. So 5 minutes before my baby. And I was just going to dance. And I had this specific song that I listened to. It's by DTO. I mean, we can link it if you want. And it's all about like Shakti and it's like this like very like I don't know, like juicy, kind of saucy. And I would just like move. And sometimes I would cry, and sometimes I would yell, sometimes I'd be totally silent, and I would just move. The rule was I had to move the whole song. And at the end, I could collapse and be back into feeling however I want to feel. But for that, like 3 minutes, I was gonna be in this dancing thing. And I tell you, 2 weeks later, I was better. And I know this isn't for everyone, right? Everyone has their own experiences with postpartum depression and all of their feelings. And so then I was like, okay, I'm not depressed. I can wake up, I can do my life. But then I was nervous about everything. Even though I had had a baby before, I had such like crippling anxiety. So then I was like, okay, what am I doing with this? I did the depression one. Like now this is my new challenge. And kind of like going through all of these huge hurdles of feelings to get to the end where I could look back and be like, wow, not only did I do that largely alone, but like I did it myself. And that's kind of where Wolf Mother came from. It wasn't like, oh, I went to a healer and they healed me with a magic wand, which isn't real anyway, but we love to believe it is. Or, I didn't go to medicine. I didn't go to pharmaceuticals. I went to me. And when I came out and was like, I just did that. I mean, it was like F word, like, look at me. Like it was like I had that in my pocket, right? And then this energy started to build of like this wolf. And when after my daughter was born, we'd gone to Wyoming, and we had just bought a new house, and we wanted to put art on the walls. We walk into this art studio, and like boom, these 2 wolves are looking at us, and they're huge. They're like 6 feet tall. They're like enormous paintings. And we bought them. My husband bought one. And he was like, "That's me." And I was like, "And we bought one for me." That was like, "That's me." And they're like, one's like rainbow and beautiful and like very like serene. That's me. And then his is like really dark and like intense and looking you right in your soul. And we hung them in our house. And so it was kind of like that. And I'm going through all these things, and then I was thinking about wolves, and people keep bringing me all these things. My best friend was like, "Oh, have you read this book about how they reintroduced wolves into Yosemite?" I'm like, "No, why would I read that? Like, what does that have to do with anything?" And then I start reading, and I'm like, wolves, okay. And then I have a friend who's like, oh, I always carry around this wolf pelt. And I'm like, wolf pelt? What are you talking about? And she like pulls it out of her bra. And I was like, wolves, like they're coming to me everywhere. And I was like, okay, well, I told my husband something about wolves. And he goes, oh, like wolves are really cool. Did you know? And I was like, what do you know about wolves? And so all these things are just coming to me. He's like, they've never had a wolf in a circus, which is like one of the poems in my book, you know, and like how wolves like are a pack and how they are a unit together, and all of this like imagery started coming together of you know male wolves, they will go and hunt, and then they will bring the food back. They won't eat first. Most animals will go and hunt and the males will eat, and then they'll hunt again and bring it back for the women and children, or I guess female and cubs. And they don't. They go and get the food and they either lead the pack to it or they bring it to the pack, and then they go off again and go for themselves, which is
Mhm.
very interesting. And I liked that. When they're traveling, they travel in a straight line. The male in the front, the youngest male in the front, and the oldest male in the back, I think. I'm not sure if I have that backwards, but a male in the front and a male in the back, and the women and children in the middle. And they all go in one line so that if there's a predator, they can't tell how many wolves there are. It just looks like there's one or two. What's the difference between two and 17? You can't tell by the tracks, right? But they have the males protecting them on the front and the back, which is like not how it is with bears. I mean, they have their cubs, and the male leaves, and the female raises her cubs on her own, right? And then when the males are like, they just leave her. It's a totally different situation than a lot of the animals in the animal kingdom, and I loved it. And I just was like, this is me. This is me. This is Wolf Mother. This is who I want to be. And so I just started writing all these poems. Being in Poems and Power was a big part of that. When I started going to Poems and Power, which is the group that we're in with Chelsea, I just started. Cleopatra was my first class, and she said in that class, if you don't believe in your art, no one will. And I
Mhm.
was like on this mother thing, on this mother thing, on this feeling good thing. And then I was like, wait, but I'm not creating, and I've always been a creator, and what am I doing? you know and if I don't believe in my art, which I didn't, it was just frivolous, then like, and I was like, my husband doesn't really take it seriously. It's like, well, duh, because I didn't take it seriously. No one really took me seriously because I didn't. So I started being like, okay, Wolf Mother is one piece, the creation is another piece, and somehow they merged into be the same thing. And I think that that was kind of the huge lesson of Wolf Mother for me, was that the creative piece and the being who I want to be piece, it's the same thing, right? Like, I was thinking this as I was driving today. Like, it's self-actualization, right? It's like we've got, before I was not, I'm on the, if you know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like I was not taking care of my basic needs, right? I was exhausted, I was depleted, I was barely like having time to eat because I'm taking care of the babies. Okay, get that settled. Okay, then go up a level. How am I feeling emotionally? Okay, get that settled. Going up, and then boom, you get to this point where you're like, okay, my needs are settled. I want to say I have time, but for me, it's more like I make time, right? Like I have to carve out the time, and I sit and I'm like, what do I actually want to do right now? And the answer is always drop into that like juicy spiritual space. And for me, I get there with creating. So, so yeah, I was thinking today in the car, what if like everybody in the world was reaching self-actualization? What if we all were doing what we wanted to be doing? And I think sometimes that could be a scary thought, because then we're like, oh God, like, our system is so controlled and we know what's going to happen and everybody's in their, designated spots. And there's something comforting about that. But if everybody were to actually do what they want, I think we'd still have enough bakers. We'd still have enough, you know, tr tree trimmers. We'd still have enough mothers. We still have enough of everything. People would just shuffle around to the spots that they want to be at, and people would be so much more alive, and our children would be raised in such a different energy. And I think that was really the big driver for me, was like, if I am anxious, my daughter will be anxious.
Mhm.
She started picking her nails when she was like 2 or 3. And I immediately was like, oh my God, like that's me. That's me. She's doing that because of me. And I have to get better so she doesn't have to do what I'm doing now. I mean, lugging, like like slugging through the swamp of all of the things. You know, if I don't give her a swamp, she's just like walking on grass. I mean, she's just strolling. How much further can she get than me? How much bigger can she be than me?
I love that part right there, where we're redefining motherhood. At the front door. Sorry for the noise. I'm at school. You know, mothers were more than one thing, right? And one of the ways we can serve our kids. Someone is at the front door. Someone's at the front door. One of the ways we can serve our kids is by being an example for them. And I know you've heard it, that Carl Jung quote, the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents.
Mm.
And so I hear it from you, and I know I've been going through it myself. Like, how can I redefine motherhood so I don't have to give up everything for my daughter? And instead, she gets to be part of this dream, part of the books, part of the work, part of the aliveness. And I'm not shutting myself down to serve her, but we get to all expand together. And your poem that you just read, that reclamation, like, tell me more about that. Like, we're trained, you know, we're trained by the patriarchy. A mother is like this, a mother does that, a mother is self-sacrificing. And we're redefining those narratives, and we're redefining what a mother is. So tell us what you think about it.
So for the poem, I want to be clear. I loved nursing my baby. I loved it. We were going on like 2 years strong, and I'd already nursed my daughter, and it was amazing and it was great. And I started getting to this point where I was like, I love it. He loves it. We're doing great. And then all of a sudden I was like, I'm depleted. I'm done. And I had done my job, right? Like everybody was like, how long are you gonna, I was sort of on the opposite side. Instead of they were like, great job, or do you need help nursing? They were kind of like the how long are you gonna do this campaign? Which is a whole other pressure that we need to talk about as women. There's no right way to do anything according to the peanut gallery, right? So I'm over here being like, I'm gonna do it until it feels good. Right. And then all of a sudden I felt not good. I felt depleted. I felt like I think it's time for me to be with me, and it's hard to say this to anyone who has been there or is in that right now, because everybody's journey is so personal. For me, my daughter and I, we didn't make it to 1 year. We were like at 11 months, and it was all me. I was like, let's nurse, and she was like, eh. I was like, okay. Where it was the opposite with my son. He loved it. We loved it. It was great. And then one day I was done. And I told myself that if I wanted to more days of the week not nurse than nurse, so it'd be like 4 against 3, then I could stop. But I don't want to do it once or twice and then stop and regret it and all that, all the mom guilt that like piles up. I was like, hey, how can I make this choice for myself? And one day I just did. And the best advice someone gave me, it was my cousin, and she was like, look, you're going to know when you know. And I think that was part of Wolf Mother too, is like trusting when I knew, and I knew that from experience that my children would not do as I said. They would do as I do, right? The first time my daughter drops an F-bomb, I'm like, well, I know where the fuck that came from, right? Like, I'm like, that was me, and like, it's so, and like, I see her being so sweet and kind to her brother. I'm like, well, that's me, and if she gets mad and yells, I'm like, well, that's me too, and I'm noticing all of these trends. So I'm like, look, if she's gonna do what I do, then I better be very thoughtful about what I do. Right. And I better be very thoughtful about what I say. And I better be thoughtful not just about what I say and what I do, but the way I do it, the energy that I'm in when I do it. Right. There's a difference between like, speed cleaning the whole house with like resentment. Right. And then there's a way of like being Mary Poppins about it. Right. Which is why we love Mary Poppins, because she's like, let's just do it with some sass and fun. Right. So I started rethinking all these things. And I think about this. There's this woman I follow on Instagram. Her name's Kelly. I don't know her last name, but she's an astronaut. Right. And I keep thinking about her. And she is all about like showing everyone that she can be an astronaut. And everyone's like, don't you feel bad? You have a 5-year-old or 6-year-old. And she's like, no, I feel great about this. My daughter's going to grow up and know that an astronaut is an of course. Of course I can be an astronaut. My mom's an astronaut, right? My daughter's not going to say that because I'm not an astronaut. But she's going to grow up and say, of course I could be an artist or a poet. Of course I can do other things besides just raise babies. Not that that's wrong, and not that I'm knocking anyone who is fulfilled by that. And I was 80% fulfilled by that, but I wasn't all the way, right? And you got to get honest with yourself, right? I think that's part of the magic and pain of Wolf Mother is I had to really get honest about why I wasn't feeling good. And part of it was like, okay, deficiencies. Like I lost a lot of blood. I'm nursing. A lot of things were going out, but what was coming in,
Mhm.
right? And for me, the coming in is like, and this is going to be, this might trigger people, but like, is solitude. As a mom, that is so hard to have. It is so hard to have solitude when you're taking care of everyone all the time. And who's taking care of you? And unless we live in these villages with these wise women like coming in and like swaddling us up or taking the baby from us or helping us or making poultices for, I mean, doing all the ancient things, like no one's doing that anymore. So we have to do it for ourselves. And I resented that for a long time. I didn't want to be that person. I wanted my mom to come and take care of me. I wanted my grandma, who's not even alive, to come and take care of me. I wanted all these things. And I just, I had to realize it was me. So if I can reclaim my own power, if I can do it for myself, if I can teach my daughter through actions, and also, I'll tell her too, but she won't listen until she sees me do it, is like, yeah, like I also like I want to travel. There's so little right now, so we're not doing a ton of traveling, but like I want to go to the Greek islands. Glenn was like, my husband's like, like I don't really want to go there. He's like, maybe you could take Avina one day. I was like, absolutely. Yes. Nailed it. I'm gonna go take her to the Greek islands where like the women used to be the matriarchy, right? I'm
Mm.
gonna go take her to the Louvre. Like we're gonna look at art. I'm gonna go take her around here, around where I live, to the trees. We're gonna go talk to the trees. We're gonna go just be and so I'm trying to teach her in a million different ways how to connect with yourself, how to connect with God, how to connect with the trees, how to make art. And she always asks me, "Oh, do you like it?" I'm like, "Oh, is it good?" And I have to every time, "Do you like it?" It's good because you made it, right? Because already at 4.5, she thinks some art is good and some art isn't good. Because that's what we do to everyone else. And I think that if we don't own what we want to do, if we don't own our real desires, if we don't own having a full life, a fully lived life, then we end up like sort of as ghosts. Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way, talks about being a ghost artist and that you're either an artist or you're a ghost artist because everybody is an artist, right? And there are all these people that have been talked out of it. And like, how can we not talk ourselves out of it? Maybe we need to talk ourselves back into it,
Mhm.
lost it, and how do we keep talking our kids into going for their desires, whatever they are? Art school like wouldn't make me any money. So like my parents said, you can't go. Like, okay, well, funny people make money making art. Like, why can't I be one of them?
It's so funny you say that because I wanted to be a writer since I was little and I was writing books and they had little maps and little pockets and things like that. And I remember my dad telling me that writers don't make any money. So I changed plans and I became a
Right,
teacher, as
right,
though teachers make tons of money. But here I am in my 40s, like circling back. Oh,
right.
yeah, I've always been a writer. I am a writer. And now I'm actually publishing the books. But it doesn't just go away. We
No.
can't be convinced out of our dreams. Like they might go in hiding or you might be a ghost artist, but they're
Mhm.
always there.
Right. And I feel like the more people come alive again, and like the more as I was coming alive back through like the dancing and the, overcoming the anxiety, and like as I was coming back alive, I was like, I couldn't stop the poems coming out. I mean, I'm telling you, they were like, and this is another thing like we can talk about is like I don't really think that we make all of our own art, right? It's more like a dance with the divine. It's more of like there's this great story that Elizabeth Gilbert tells about how like poetry just like comes to you and like you're either ready for it or you're not. And it's not just poetry, all creative things, movie ideas, like whatever, paintings. And if you're not ready for it, it will go to someone else. And there's this story, and I can't remember the poet, but she's like out in the field, like farming, like picking something, and she feels a poem like sweeping across the plain. And she's like, oh my God, drops her basket, like runs full speed to her house where her pen and paper is, right? Is running. And the poem is like, is like catching up with her, moving through her. It's like about to leave. She gets to her desk, she grabs the poem and pulls it in backwards and writes the whole thing down backwards. And I love that because it explains it like gives a visual of like if you're not good, if you're not I don't mean good as in good or bad. If you're not like feeling good with yourself, if you're not like having time for solitude, if you're not clearing out all of your gunk, your trauma, your beliefs. For me, it was like all of these thoughts, this guilt about everything, always being bad, doing everything wrong. Like, if I didn't get that shit out, then creativity had nowhere to go. The poem couldn't come to me. I was full. I had to be more of an open vessel for it. And I think the less we like dump on our children, either actually or through them watching how we operate, then the less they will be available for creativity. The less they're going to fight for, I want to be a writer no matter what. And when I was doing Wolf Mother and I was empty, I mean, I was just purging so many things. The creativity was just like, it was just, I couldn't stop it. It was just kept coming and kept coming and kept coming and kept coming. And I was like, and I love the feeling of it, right? That feeling of the poem moving through you, that I was like, ooh, I live for this. Like, come on, like more baby, more baby, more baby, more baby. So and then you get to the point where you're like, okay, am I gonna like show people this? Am I gonna publish this?
Well, I think it's funny because a lot of my poetry writing, I've been getting back into it since joining Poems in Power. And so, for anyone that doesn't know, we have a phenomenal teacher, Chelsea Diane. She leads classes, and it's a membership called Poems in Power. And that's how Kimmery and I met. And let's take a moment to talk a little bit about our friendship and how we support each other with the poetry and the books. Um, so what do you remember as the first time like we interacted and met online? And I want to hear this from your perspective first.
Okay, I just remember you messaged me and said something, and I don't even remember what you said, but I was just like, yep. I was like, yes, to that. And then I don't know, then we were going to be magical morning partners, but I already had a magical morning partner, and I was like, I'm like kind of maxed out. I can't do double magical mornings. I'm only doing like twice a week now because it's too many days, and our memos get so long. We like send too many things. So I'm like, okay, I can't do that again. But what if we like spoke our books into existence? What if we like did like magical book? And I thought about that because of your tag, manifesting book magic. I was like, what if we use each other to manifest our book magic? Right. And you were like, done. You were like, yep. So we're just like yupping each other, like, yep, yep. And then it kind of just evolved into like talking about all of the things. And what I am so grateful to you for is that you give me such permission to be myself. And I don't have a lot of people in my life that are giving me permission to be myself, right? And I don't really give myself permission to be myself sometimes. And
Mm.
so having somebody to voice memo and you just like being yourself unapologetically helps tremendously, right? It's the same thing as like do as we see, not do as we're told, right? Like if I see you being yourself, then I'm like, well, obviously then I can be myself. And then I be myself and you receive it so well. And I'm like, okay, like it's almost like when you go to a yoga class and they're like, we're practicing mindfulness, we're practicing meditation, we're practicing asana, we're practicing so that when we go into our real life, we can be more of the yoga in real life. It's like that's kind of how I see our friendship is like I practice being powerful and authentic and alive. And then I have more permission to do that in my real life. And so it's sort of like this really awesome like container for like expansion, but it affects like it like bleeds everywhere. It's like bleeding on into all of my life, which is so great. And then we got to meet in real life, which is amazing. And immediately I was like, I feel like I can't believe this is the first time we met. Like
I
I was
know.
like, we haven't met before. What do you mean we were six?
Well, I feel like our friendship enriches my life so much because, like you said, it's like practice being powerful and someone that can hold you in that. And I remember when I was writing my poetry book and I would be writing, and that feeling is so exciting. You were just describing it when the poetry's coming out and it's so good. And I would edit and then I would record it on my phone and I'd listen to it and I'd be like, is this ready to send to Kimmery? Like it was almost like the Kimmery check, like, does it sound ready? And then if it didn't, I would change something, I would record it again, and I was like, yes, it's ready. And then I would send you the poem, and you would give me so much amazing feedback, and mostly just like enthusiasm, like keep going, or you'd tell me like your favorite line or something that just gave me that fire to keep going and that encouragement. And I feel like female friendships, especially, they can be so magical and inspiring and important because it's so easy to get lost in motherhood and all of these responsibilities and like obligations. And so to be able to turn to someone that can nurture this creative side of you, it's like a very sacred, special thing.
It is. And I was just talking to somebody about how, as a mother, like we are like the energetic, like root of the family, right? And like you could have a mom that does all the responsibilities, right? She does them all. She cleans everything, she cooks everything, she gets everybody's butts wiped and everybody fed and blah, 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 right? Like she does it all. Check, 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 check. And then you will have one experience as a child, right? Then you can have somebody who like doesn't really get all the responsibilities met, but has a great attitude, right? And that's a different experience, right? And then you have somebody who's like really, really trying to get all the things checked, but is doing them with such love and joy, and that's a different experience. And we, all of us collectively, have grown up with different varying amounts of have the things that needed to be done get done, gotten done, and have and how is the emotional component, right? And what is the mental health of our mother, right? I saw this study from, I want to say, Harvard. That was like a longitudinal study. That's a hard word for me to say. Like a study over many years. And it said that okay, I'm going to ask you because I want your opinion. What do you think the number one factor for a successful adult is via the way that they were parented? And successful being like mental health, supporting themselves, making a difference in the world. What is the number one factor to get a kid to become that as an adult?
I might have seen this already. I think it's something like either the mental health or happiness of the mother.
Right. It is the exactly. And if we actually believed that, if we told it, if we put it on billboards, if that's the only thing that was ever on a billboard, and that's the thing that people saw, and it doesn't have to be the mother, it's primary caregiver. So like if there's only a dad, then it's the dad, right? Or if the dad is mostly at home, then it's the dad and not the mom. Whoever the number one person around the children is the most, is how fulfilled and happy they are. That's mind blowing. That would actually turn our entire society upside down. Because then it would be a lot less about, hey, have you bounced back in 8 weeks? Are you bikini ready? And it would be a lot more like, hey, have you slept? How are you doing? Do you need to talk? Can I help you? Not even can I help you? How can I help you? What do you need help with? What do you need to talk about now? Or hey, have you had an hour this week to go do something that you want, and separate from sleep, after sleep, you know after getting your hair done or whatever you feel like you have to do to be on the outside? Like, have you done something for yourself on the inside? Have you meditated? Have you made art? Have you gone and exercised? Whatever it is that you do for you that makes you feel good, are we actually telling moms that they should do that? I think there's a big wave where moms are like clawing tooth and nail to do that. I mean, Wolf Mother is like me clawing my way into like giving myself permission to do that. But I think any mom will tell you about the mom guilt and how it's just suffocating and whose fault it is. I mean, we could talk about that for a whole other podcast. There's a million reasons, but it doesn't actually matter because it's our job now. And it's like healing myself, right? It's like I want someone else to like pave the way for me, to tell me it's okay, to do it for me. And it's like, nope, that's my job. I have to do that. You have
I
to do
love
that.
I love what you said about basically taking care of your inner world.
Right.
You need time for that too,
Mhm.
beyond the sleep, the shower, the food. Um, and I think some people don't even know, especially moms, if they had a free hour,
Yeah.
what would they do with it?
Right.
They have so little practice at
Right.
tending to their inner world, they don't even know what to do with that time.
Exactly. And what would that even look like? And so I think for those people, part of what helped me, and I think maybe would have helped you because you talked about how you love to write and then you kind of circled back, is like to go be with that kid, right? Like, and I think that this becomes easier as you become a mom because you see your own child and you're like, oh, she loves to run around, naked in the sprinklers in the summer. Like, maybe I would like that. Like, I probably would like that, like, or she loves to like, paint with like ridiculous abandon and there's paint everywhere. Like maybe I would like to do that instead of be like, I need to paint this perfect little thing that looks exactly like the flower pot. Like it has to look the same way. It's like maybe that's not art at all. Or maybe that is art, but maybe that's not what's gonna be good for your inner world, right? Maybe it's like, I don't know, just like my daughter's scooter's so fast. It's just like hair in the wind. Like maybe it's get some wind in your face. I don't know what it is for you, but like go ask yourself. If you're with your kids, it's the best time because you're like, hey, what do you guys want to do? Oh, I want to just like paint my whole body. Like my son just like paints himself. I'm like, stop. And then I'm like, no, don't stop. Just do it and we'll take a shower. We'll jump in the pool, whatever. Trying to find the play, right? But you can't find the play if you're not fed, if you're not slept, if you don't feel like, if you just feel like how are you going to play? Right. And that's where the friendship is the best because your friend is like, you can do it. What are you doing for you? Get out there. Don't feel bad. And when we met, we spent a weekend away from our kids. And yeah, I mean, leaving is like, a ton of work because you're like sending out the meals, like, here's what happens in case they get stung by a bee or like, I, I don't know, get a fever, like you like lay out all the medicine. Here are the directions, here's the, because you know how to do everything, but no one else does really. And then you like get on the road or get on the plane and you're like, hey, I feel 50% excited and 50% like shit. It's like but we got to change the ratio, right? Where it's like, 98% excited and 2% like, okay, eh. Instead of just feeling this like crushing guilt. And if you're not at 50-50, or if you're not at 51, 48, 49, then you're not going, right? And how many of us are at like 90% mom guilt? Oh, I work too much. I don't work enough. I this, I that. I just, I'm not doing enough. I'm doing too much. Oh, like there's so many. And I think the internet is part of that, right? It's freeing in many ways. And in a lot of other ways, it gives us too many opinions that we don't just trust ourselves. We don't just go back to ourselves and say, what do my kids need? What do I need? What does my family need? Not like what does, XYZ influencer need or what does my friend need?
One thing that you said when we met and we went to the Poems and Power event at the Biltmore, the thing that was most amazing to me, I just loved being around so many women that were so excited to be there.
Mhm.
So many people that were alive and creative and invested and present and turned on. Like, how often in your day-to-day life do you interact with other adults that are just pumped up? You
No,
know?
it's the ghost people. It's the ghost people. And we love them. We have compassion for them. But it's not helping us, right?
Yeah.
Right. Like so I guess that's part of it too, is like you start to level up and then you start to be like, oh, I guess other people are getting inspired by me, which is wonderful. But then you're like, who's inspiring me? Who's around me energetically, like
Hmm.
whoomp, 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 like giving me the vibes, right? It's like
Yes.
you're always the one vibing everyone else. You need to find a bigger pond with bigger fish to,
Yes.
to go
And
learn from.
that's one of the benefits of the internet is that, we live in different states, but I feel very connected to you. And our friendship is possible because of these voice memos and phone calls and sharing poetry and all of that. So I just think that's so important that if you don't have those people in your regular life or in your neighborhood or your small circle at home, like it's okay to broaden your scope and look out to who else might inspire you and fill you up and match your vibes and all of that.
Right. And like, I always do this thing sometimes where I'm like, well, like, how is that gonna happen? Like, the like logic swoops in to my dream. And it's like, well, how is that gonna happen? It's just like such a party pooper. So like when the way I joined Poems and Power, okay, I'd been off Instagram for like, I don't know, like a year or something after my son was born. I was like, it's not good for me. I'm not having fun. I'm done. And I sign on one day. Okay, I don't even know why. I remember I'm like making coffee. I'm like in my little coffee nook. In my coffee nook, I open it and like boom, pops up Chelsea. And like we had followed each other since the beginning. Okay. And I see that she's like doing classes and that she's teaching a class about Cleopatra. And I can't even explain to you. I didn't even know what the class was like about. I didn't even know it was about poetry. I didn't know anything. I was like, okay, signed up. And then I like first thing I posted in a year is like a selfie of me and said, it's almost my birthday. I signed up for Poems and Power as a birthday present. Like, why did I do that? I don't know. It's not like I had been following her. I mean, obviously I'd been following her for a long time, but I didn't open Instagram in a year. It's not like I was like, oh yeah, like I keep seeing this. It looks exciting. I just knew that. And the clearer I get to be a vessel for creativity, the more I take care of myself, the more I'm like, I'm in charge, the more of like all of that, then the more I'm like, I see, like you, I'm like, yep, I'm just like that. Of the way I met my last best friend. She's teaching a fitness class, like with our kids, we're like pushing our strollers around. And I just like, that one. And I walk up to her after class and I was like, we should be friends. And she was like, what? Like, she was like, okay, like crazy lady. I was like, we should be friends. Our kids are like feral children in the bushes together. All the other kids are like coloring, right? Our kids are being feral together. I was like, this seems like a good situation to me. Like our kids are getting along. I like the vibe of you. Like, just here's my number. And she was like,
That,
okay. And like, it was kind of weird. Like, it was like, okay. And then like a couple hours later, she texted me like, let's go to lunch. And I was like, nailed it. Knew
yep,
it. Just knew it. Sometimes you just know.
you just know. I
Right.
saw
So like whatever you're sitting on, stop sitting on it and like do it. You
maybe
already know what it is.
some people are like, oh, I wish I could be friends with her. Or, oh, it's so hard to make friends as an adult. Actually, it's not. If you put it out there and you're like, we need to be friends. Here's my number.
Right.
And you give them that compliment. That's a huge
Right.
compliment.
And I think too, like for as a woman, I was like very not used to that, right? I feel like men have all this training and like, okay, you go up to a woman, you say hi, they're used to being the instigator of a thing. I mean, again, I'm vastly generalizing, but I feel like that is the situation. I wasn't like going up to guys and being like, hey, like they were coming up to me and I was like, yes, no, yes, I got to be the picker instead of the walker up to the other person. And so then as an adult, I was like, I think I just need to figure it out. I think I just need to do it. And the way you said, I wish I could be the kind of person that, okay, this just happened on 4th of July. I was like, wanted to wear this like little neckerchief. Like I always see people wearing like a neckerchief. And I was like, God, I wish I could be the kind of woman that wore, and before I even finished the sentence, I was like, I can be. I can be the type of woman that wears a neckerchief. All I have to do is put it on. And then I'm that woman, right? I wish I could be the type of woman that could publish a book. Hey, you can. You just have to do it.
Yep.
You just have to do it. And part of it is the physical stuff, right? You have to write it, you have to get the neckerchief, you have to tie it on, you have to put the book on whatever platform you want. Okay, but most of it, the huge iceberg, right, is deciding it, is rewriting your thoughts about it, is like, and for some of it, it's very gentle, right? It's like, oh, I want to be with my inner child, I want to meditate, I want to move, I want to this. And for me, some of it is like, I'm just like a bulldozer. I'm like, I'm done with all those thoughts, I'm done. Like, and I kind of build up. It's like Tony Robbins always says, how do people change like in one day? They don't. They build up, they build up, they build up, they build up, and one day they're done. That is very much how I operate. I'm like, okay, okay, okay. And then I'm like, I'm done. I'm never going back. We're done. Let it be known. I decree. Thank you for understanding. Like, and I think I'm reaching a point right now with a lot of things in my life where that's happening. And it's so intense and uncomfortable and painful and good. On the other side, it's gonna be great. And I've done this enough times that I know on the other side it's gonna be great. Okay, on the other side it's gonna be great. Can we just get there? And the so I'm like in a bulldozer moment right now where I'm like, okay, I decided last week. What did I decide? Um, oh, when I just feel like a piece of shit, something happens, someone says something, so you have an argument, whatever, and then you just walk away being like, ugh, it's me again. I was like, I'm done. I'm done with that. We can still have an argument. Someone can still criticize me. I can still do something wrong. I can still make mistakes. But how about at the end of it, it's not like I'm a piece of shit. How about the thought is like, oh, we disagreed, or oh, they didn't like what I was doing. Doesn't mean I'm a piece of shit. That just means they didn't like what I was doing. It's actually way more simple. My brain goes like, oh, this happened, so then ergo 17 other things. It's like, what if actually just the one thing happened? What if just someone criticized me and then that was over? It was it. I didn't make it mean anything. I didn't have to change myself. I didn't have to criticize myself. I didn't have to let it in. It was just like, oh, somebody criticized me. Okay, well, you don't have to like my poems. I mean, you don't have to follow me on Instagram. You don't have to listen to this podcast. It's cool. Somebody
Yeah.
will, somebody won't. But
I think what you're saying about the self-talk and like our own inner experience, what we're doing on autopilot, like the people that are brave enough to slow down and look at all that stuff, that's really where the magic is. Because so many people just go about life on autopilot and they're not looking at that internal stuff. And I think because we write poetry, because we're willing to feel big feelings, because we look at all of this, we have the opportunity to reprogram some of that. And when, like you, what you're saying, I'm done with that. I'm not going to do that anymore to myself. I'm going to choose this other way. Now your whole life is different.
right. And if you're like, I don't have time for that, okay, you're wrong. Everyone has the exact amount of time, same amount of time. I mean, I'm a poet, but I'm like kind of like intense too. So sorry if you're like, oh, I thought she was gonna be gentle. No. You have the same amount of time as everyone else, right? Everybody has the same amount of time. And Tony Robbins is Tony Robbins, right? And Chelsea Diane is Chelsea Diane. And I don't know, the Olympians are Olympians, right? Like people are finding a way to make their dreams happen, right? It's all about negotiating your time and how much you want it, right? And one of the things I first did was I didn't have more time. So I just would drive. When I would drive in the car, I would just drive with no music. And my, like, they're like, write down every thought you have. I'm like, I'm not doing that. That's annoying. Although I actually think that'd be really helpful. Just for me, I just couldn't do it. So I would just drive around with no music on. And I would just listen to my thoughts. And I'd be like, oh, that's an interesting one. And I would try not to judge them, which is hard because you're like, oh, I'm a piece of shit again. Okay, stop doing that. Stop doing that. Like try to just listen to them. And I'd be like, oh, like I would pull up next to someone and I'd be like, and I'd like judge how they look, or I'd be like, oh, they're judging how I look, or oh, and I'd be like, whoa, that's interesting. Okay, then I would like drive some more and I'd think about an old memory. And I'm like, why do I keep thinking of that memory? Okay, interesting. And I would just start like noticing the thoughts, right? I didn't have to sit down and meditate to do that, although I also like to meditate. I didn't have to go to a yoga class. I was driving anyway. I had to go get gas anyway. I was just going to do it without music and just be with myself, which is so hard and scary. And I have so much compassion for anyone who's like, I really don't want to do that. Yeah, me either. I didn't want to do that either. But oh my God, that's where the power is, right? Instead
Wow.
of people saying who you are to you your whole life, and they are, oh, you're good at math. Oh, you can only be good at math or English. You must be a math person. Or, oh, you're really tall. Or, oh, you're great at sports. Oh, you're not so good at sports. Like whatever they're telling you, from age 0 to now, do they get to be in charge of who you are? Or do you get to be in charge of who you are? And it's like, you can't be in charge of who you are if you're running this computer program that has been programmed by other people. And that's why it's hard, right? Because you got to go in, you got to learn some code, you got to recode some of this stuff. And some of it is very sticky, right? And there's a million ways to deal with it, right? For me, the best ones have been like hypnotherapy, which is go straight into the subconscious, or like meditation, or like listening. I would listen to the same thing as I fell asleep every night. I'd be like, this is what I want to believe, right? This is what I used to record myself. I'd write out affirmations, then I would record myself saying them, because I guess there's this thing about listening to other people's voice versus listening to your own voice, which is very uncomfortable. So like no one wants to listen to their own recordings, which I love that you said you listen to the memos. Sometimes I do too. Sometimes like I'll listen to your response to mine and then I'll go listen to mine again. And then I'll listen to like I'll listen to a bunch of them and I'm like, oh, it's so interesting to like hear myself, which is also where a lot of the power of Wolf Mother came when I started saying them out loud, when I started reading my poems out loud and I started like hearing them come alive. And it's so funny when I just read that poem, even though, I mean, that was like almost a year, not a year ago, 6 months ago, almost a year ago, that I stopped nursing. I still feel emotional about it because it was so beautiful and meaningful. And also, it was time to change. And it's not always like, yay, I can't wait to change. Sometimes it's like, it's coming for me. I'm either getting on the train or I'm getting left behind.
Well,
And
I think I shared with you, circling back to the breastfeeding,
yeah,
I also breastfed for 2.5 years. And the reason I had to stop was because I had a full-on panic attack.
yeah,
I was trying to breastfeed,
yep,
work,
yep,
pack, move, doing all these things. And it just came so loud and clear, like, Nicole, you need to take something off your plate.
right,
And so the next day, I just started wearing a sweatshirt so she couldn't access them, started
yeah,
giving her the bottle. And that was the only way I could reclaim a little
right,
space in my mind and in my heart and in my
right,
body
right,
for me.
right.
And it was sad. It was hard because it was such a pleasurable, enjoyable experience for both of us. Like we connected a lot through those breastfeeding years. And I know not everyone has that same experience. I'm so glad I had it, but sometimes things have to change. And our willingness to let things change and not cling is
Mhm.
also part of the motherhood story because things are constantly changing.
Right. And I think that we don't always believe that you can feel two ways at the same time, right? It can be both. It can be exciting or it can be needed and it can be sad, right? I think that that is a lot of what's happening this summer for me is like a lot of change and there's like some grief, right? But there's also some like, it has to be this way. Like the old way isn't working. I think this is actually like a big metaphor for sort of the world right now. It's like we're changing a lot of things. And a lot of us will cling and feel sad and feel like we've lost something. And that can be true. And at the same time, it can also be better for us, or it can also be the next step. And like, I think that's kind of like, you know, Tony Robbins is the best. He makes everything so exciting, but it's not always exciting. Sometimes it's like you're crying the whole way through the transformation, right?
Mhm.
Like you are just you're crawling your way through it, and that's fine. It can be painful. It doesn't have to be fun. You said that to me on Saturday. This does not have to be fun, you know. And I just wish it was. It'd be great if it was. I love it when everything's fun. It's not always fun, and the way we parent our kids isn't always fun. Like sometimes you have to put your pajamas on. And it's not really a game. It's just like put the pajamas on,
Mhm.
brush your teeth. I mean, yes, it could be sometimes we can have fun with it, but sometimes it's like, look, you just gotta like do it.
Well, Kimmery, I could talk to you forever, and I will for the rest of my life. But for this episode, where can people find you if they want to read more, know more, see more? Where can we find you?
Okay, so I'm on Instagram. My handle is Kimmery Writes, Kimmery, and then Writes with an S on the end. I'm on Amazon and Barnes Noble and a bunch of other places for Wolf Mother. This is what it looks like. I painted it myself, so go find it. Um, And what else can you find me on? Yeah, that's kind of it. I mean, local people, I teach yoga. I have exciting things coming soon. Not another book for poetry yet, because that takes time to percolate, but I'm working on a children's book, which I am illustrating myself, which is like so crazy. And fun and challenging. And also another thing where I'm like, I just decided I'm doing it, so I'm doing it. So I kind of steamrolled myself into that one, but it'll be fun. And I'm also working on a course for creatives. So if you're interested in learning more about like how to dance with the divine, how to get clear, how to work through those limiting beliefs, the trauma, you know, the fear, all of that stuff that like comes along. You're like, hey, I said I was going to be a painter. It's all going to be fun. It's like, then all this stuff comes up, kind of like dealing with all the stuff and also finding ways to play. A lot of it is about, you know, going back into that inner child and like playing and feeling good. And like, what do you really want to make? And can you give yourself permission to make whatever without any strings attached, right? Like, can you just make it for you and then see what happens? So that's my next thing on the agenda coming soon.
I love it. I can't wait for all of it. So, thank you so much for being here. And listeners, thank you so much for listening. If any of this is resonating with you, head on over to Apple Podcasts, give us that 5-star review or rating, share this episode with a friend, share it with a new mother, someone that needs some inspiration, some support, some life in her life. She will thank you. So like always, thanks for being here, and we will catch you again very soon. Thank you, Kimmery.
Thank you.
Bye.